and I'm based at the University of Warwick as an emeritus professor, and I work with Sally Ann Barnes, who's also based at Warwick, and we're going to be talking today about some research we've just completed looking at the role of parents and carers in providing career guidance. And actually, we can hardly have had a better preliminary introduction than Mantek's presentation, which was, I think, a powerful example of involving parents and carers in a particular careers program. So hopefully this will continue that that line of thought. Can we go to the next one, Sally? No, it's not going.
Yes. Hold on.
Okay. I'm also very mindful of the powerful messages from the first keynote presentation about contextualization and the kind of socio-political nature of the work of careers advice, especially with disadvantaged young people. And so this research, to contextualize this research, it was carried out in England, and the brief that we were working to was looking at this whole area of how parents and carers can be better supported to feel more informed and confident about helping children with their career choices. It is something of an anomaly, I would suggest, that even though there is a substantial body of evidence that suggests that the most important influence on a young person's career development and career aspirations is their parent or carer, the extent to which parents and carers are involved and integrated into the careers education and guidance process does seem to be quite limited. And the example that Mantek presented gives an indication of the kind of innovative nature of this kind of approach. So what we did in the research was we did an extensive literature review, and we also did some field work. So we collected data from real key stakeholders and experts. Okay, Sally Ann, the findings, just in a nutshell, twofold really, the main findings. First being the role of parents in career development is exerted through particular kinds of behaviour and family conditions, and I'll say more about those in a moment. And there are two main types of involvement and engagement that became obvious from the research as we went through the study. First, the parental activities at home, and again, I can put some more detail of that in a moment. And the second are the institution-based activities. So to say a little bit more about the type of parental career support, which was identified and with a very kind of positive, constructive outcome. First, there was what we call instrumental assistance, which related to the support that parents and carers gave with their children's career-related skill development. So that could be a couple of simple examples would be job search skills, and also, how do you put together a CV in response to a job advert. The second type of parental career support would be the career-related modelling, and that are the parents' own examples of their relevant career-related behaviours and experience, plus those of friends. So, sort of modelling their own work behaviour, I suppose, is a powerful influence on young people, unsurprisingly. Verbal encouragement was a third type of support. So praise and encouragement associated with children's education and career development. And that was significantly different from emotional support. So not only was the verbal encouragement, sort of, come on, you need to do this, but the emotional support which helped young people to feel more confident and efficacious about what they were doing. So those four types of parental support emerged as highly important.
Recording in progress.
Okay, you've got it. Can we go on to the next slide, Sally Ann? You can get rid of that message on the screen. Can you got it? Or do you need...
I think you need to do it.
Yeah, okay. Measuring the involvement of parents and carers, the result was kind of unsurprising in the sense that the levels of engagement existed on a continuum, discernibly, from the fully disengaged through to fully and actively engaged. And there was a kind of middle ground of engagement only at key points. But I think, just to stress what was probably the obvious to this audience is that engagement is important to facilitate and or expand opportunities for the young people to draw upon to help with decisions. Okay, so it's important, parental engagement is important for information seeking and research behaviours. As I've already mentioned, emotionally self-efficacy and career decision-making strategies, and like entrepreneurship and team working skills. So robust evidence exists for the importance of parental support. Hard to. Okay, thanks, Sally. Significant impacts. Again, you will not be surprised to hear that the home and the caring environment is absolutely critical. The parents' own experiences of education emerged as very important. The rational input career decision making that was requested by the young people themselves, when they asked for help, and the extent to which that was responded to comprehensively and taken seriously. Then shared career conversation emerged as very important for young people, that in informal moments where parents and carers engaged in this, if they were out on an outing and there was an observation of a particularly unusual kind of job, and that triggered some kind of shared conversation, that was really important. So I talked about the importance of contextualization that was stressed by our first keynote. So in England, where the research was done, we moved from matching young people to jobs and or to attempting to tackle wider issues of social deprivation and societal disengagement. However, and it's a big however, the kind of enhancements to parental engagement and involvement that were evident in England through our research were often associated with project funding, which was short term. So when the project funding ended, the kind of enhancements tended to go with them, which is always a great source of concern. Evidence does show, however, that embedding parental engagement in school and college programmes and curricula can be very effective. And here in the UK, England needs to learn from Scotland and Wales, which can offer real insights into how this can be done really well. We did not omit study into international policies and strategies. In fact, Mantec's example was not included in the scope of our research, but policies to improve parents were found in Australia, Canada, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands and the USA, which are included in this research. And unsurprisingly, again, they seem to be working very well in some cases, but less so in others. And key variables were the educational context in which the parental engagement was being executed and the type of student population. So the implications, the overall implications thus far is that increasing engagement may require a twin focus on underlying national strategy and an individual school approach. The two go together, and contact with parents from the start of the child's educational career trajectory is absolutely critical. The earlier the better. Okay, so handing over to Sally.
Okay, so as part of the research, we spoke to various practitioners, and both in England, Scotland, Wales, and internationally for us. And what we were trying to do was pull together what actually happens in practice. So here we have a list of the current careers practice supporting parents and carers. Lots of them there will be very familiar to you all. Some of the more unusual ones were the breakfast and coffee clubs. So we found some schools were trying to invite parents in and make the environment more open, more friendly. So they offered breakfast and coffee clubs for parents to come into the school environment. Schools that offered personal guidance sessions did invite parents to join the young person with the guidance session, but we found the practice was quite patchy in places. And it was just very nice to hear about schools trying to engage parents and getting them to come in to talk about their own career experiences and jobs as well. A very small number of practitioners actually talked about offering career guidance sessions for parents. So parents could come in and experience career guidance themselves, and that was offered freely. Obviously resource intensive, but a nice practice again to invite parents in. So just giving you some examples of some of the interventions that were identified in the UK, and I'll talk through a couple of the first two in a bit more detail. So the advisor workshops and the Brilliant Club, I'll just talk through those in a moment. What we did find was actually online interventions, apps and websites were becoming more prolific in their use. They're obviously being used by schools to start communicating dissemination about the school, but offered potential for careers messages, careers activities and events to also be disseminated to parents and carers. We found an example of a platform, Learning with Parents. We thought this was a really nice example where schools brought it into the system and it started activities for learning within the classroom, and then children were encouraged to take those activities home and do them with parents, and parents were offered access to the platform to support their children. Now, this was for maths and English in the first instance, but we saw potential for this in terms of careers activities with younger children as well. And we also found an example, the Inspired Teenage online program, which is a program that teenagers could work through with their parents and go through a set of activities. International examples, we found we were selective in the countries that we had a look at. One example was the PACS program. This was used in Victoria, and they were group workshops for parents, and they were aimed at supporting parents developing career aspirations in their children. The Future Discover project in Canada, students and parents got together through workshops, and it was about increasing understanding about the future and the different possibilities and routes. The family group conference in Czechia was aimed particularly at disadvantaged young people in schools who were had the potential to drop out early, and the idea was to bring together the young person, their parents, and the support network, so careers practitioners, social workers, caseworkers, together, and to mobilise resources to support that young person. I'm going to talk about the French example in a moment. The career competency model was the development of a handbook that was developed with parents to create a guide on the options and available pathways for young people. The Clap for Youth project in Hong Kong was part of the Careers Education and Guidance program that was being offered. And as part of the program, they thought it was important to raise the aspirations of parents. So supporting parents in their careers aspirations would then in turn help them inspire their children as well. In the Netherlands, the Parents' Term was a set of workshops as well, and it was about increasing parental self-efficacy. It was helping parents build their understanding and their knowledge in handling information. But what they found was that interventions worked quite differently for different parents based on socioeconomic class. And then the individual learning plans in the US were where parents and young people were brought together with an educator or careers practitioner to develop a shared and agreed learning plan where everybody took responsibility and had action points to take forward. Just to go in a bit more detail about the practice, the advisor workshops in England were funded through the Careers and Enterprise Company, and it was a set of 3 interactive workshops specifically aimed at parents and Year 10 students, so those coming to key decision and transition points. The workshops comprised a different range of online activities and paper-based activities. The first session was aimed at parents only, and it was about helping them to understand how they influence the career decision-making of their young people. The second and third sessions involved both parents and young people. So the second session, the parents and the young people worked through activities which created a shared understanding of likes and dislikes and the strengths and weaknesses of the young person. And the third workshop was about discovering different pathways and different routes through and creating a shared understanding of a direction and pathway. All those that participated in the workshops, the young people were offered a personal guidance interview and created a collaborative action plan, and obviously parents were encouraged to attend that session as well. So the impact was reported. Although there was low attendance to the sessions, there was very positive feedback from the parents, all stating that they felt much more confident in the process, and all those involved valued the workshops. And there was this hope that conversations would start going between parents and more would attend later workshops. What was quite interesting was that the career practitioners who offered the personal guidance sessions to the young people after the workshops noticed that those who had attended the workshops were much more engaged and were better prepared with their decisions and their routes forward. So some of the key learning, the interactive content was enjoyed the most. The shared conversations that the parents and the young people had were found to be very useful. But some parents considered that the 3 workshop model was a bit too much. The Brilliant Club, again in the UK, is an initiative which schools buy into. It's specifically aimed at disadvantaged young people from non-selective schools, and the idea is to create a structured programme to raise their aspirations and get them to think about higher education as a possibility. What we found in the southeast, that some schools were adapting the activities so that parents and families could attend the sessions as well. So parents were invited along to go to university trips and engage in the cultural activities that were put on from the programme. What they found was that through this process, parents developed a much higher trust level with the school. So greater engagement, and parents gained in this sense of achievement from the young people as well. Key learning, it was a very resource intensive activity to pay for the parents to come along to the events and activities. So sustainability was a particular concern at the time. They identified that targeted provision and communication with parents was key to identifying the benefits of the programme, encouraging engagement and trust. The practitioners on the programme noticed that whilst they were raising the aspirations of young people, what they needed support with was actually labour market information knowledge to help answer some of the questions. And finally, I'm just going to go through the example from France. This is a very well-established programme. It's been running a long time and there are a number of evaluation reports on it. It's a programme where voluntary organisations provide schools with a range of services to support social inequalities. And one of those services is that school pupils that are found to be failing, or perhaps in poor neighbourhoods, are assigned a volunteer student from higher education, and that student works with the family on a weekly basis. They help with tutoring. They talk about different careers and options and help to raise aspirations and develop transversal skills. The impact is well reported for the programme. established that this unique bond that's built between a young person and the student positively impacts their relationship with school and their self-esteem. Parents and young people both reported having clearer career direction and improved career decision-making skills. Some of the key learning from the programme is that actually this long-term ongoing support is needed to build a trustful relationship, and the support is valued by both parents and young people. So I'm just going to hand back to Jenny.
Okay. Well, I'll go through these slides very quickly because I'm conscious of time. I'm also conscious we lost a few minutes at the beginning with technical difficulties, but I'll kind of speedily go through these, and how there are certain ways in which it is possible to increase parental involvement in career decision making. First of all, creating parent-friendly environments with activities to draw parents into schools, to promote and communicate careers education and activities right across the curriculum, and building on current parental engagement in school or college, and redesigning existing activities to involve parents are really highlighted as important. Next one, Zanny. Involving parents in the development of careers education provision and career strategy is really important, even though that can be problematic because parents are time poor like everybody else, but actually involving them in what's being done in schools can be outstandingly enlightening. Using technology and designing new activities that engage parents, employers and the local community. And then the final 3 points, drawing on parents' expertise to build careers education programs involving students and encouraging them to prompt their parents to get involved, and developing peer communities within and across schools and colleges. I'm sorry that's rushed, but in the report, which is online, which we'll send you the link for, this is all there in much more detail if you want to find out more. Sally, final note.
So just some of the key conclusions from the research. There is a significant body of evidence outlining the importance of parents and carers in young people's career decision making. One of the key things that we found that works is having a shared career conversation. It can lead to much greater agreement between career aspirations and more deliberate career choice strategies. Also, what we can see is that evidence emphasises the need for parents to be supported by schools and colleges, and unfortunately there's a lack of evidence on what the most impactful approaches to engaging parents with careers guidance programs. So whilst lots of activities might be going on, actual evaluative evidence is missing. And then just some of the notes or the conclusions from the policies and strategies to engage parents. Evaluation evidence on parental engagement policies is lacking, as I mentioned. Lots of policies talk about the need to support parents in shaping practice and guidance. What we can see at the moment is there's actually a move away from passive forms of involvement and information giving to creating spaces for active engagement with parents. And finally, national policies and strategies where they are in place often encourage or facilitate careers guidance rather than making it mandatory. So we're left with an open field of a patchy provision, and some countries doing more and having more interesting practices going on in established format with funding. I'm going to finish there. I'll see if there's the link there to the research, and then there's Jenny and my email to stop sharing. So there's a couple of minutes for questions before we hand over to the next speaker. There's the option to put questions in the chat or potentially raise hands.
Well, I can just raise my hand. Right.
Thank you.
During your presentation regarding one particular program, you mentioned that there were low attendance rates from parents. Was that information that you can get from all the programs? How how many parents did attend?
No, it's very hard to actually find evaluative evidence on programs, and we think that's because they're funded for specific time periods, so they just go on for a little while and then they disappear. So there's really a lack of evaluation on how many parents attend at all. So the Advisor Ones workshops we looked at, they had around 15 to 20 parents attend the first round of workshops. So they were a bit disappointed, but also recognised that it gave much greater opportunity for conversation and a more personalised one-to-one support for each family.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that you chose the parent perspective in Norway. This is something that we've discussed over time, that we need more information on how the parents are involved and how we should get them more involved, since they're so important for career decisions that young people make. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions?
At the timing.
So, Sally, did you got your little hand up?
Was your sense from the research or the interviews that it very much depended on the individual careers counsellors in particular schools, rather than the sort of policy that was set at a higher level?
Yeah, that absolutely. I think that's probably because of the lack of funding and the lack of support to do it, that it does come down to the careers practitioner at the individual level, particularly in England, particularly. Okay, so we hand over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just have to get my presentation up and going. Seems to work well for you guys, so I guess, can you see it now? Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Jenny and Sally-Ann, for a very interesting presentation. I think we have probably a lot of shared interests when it comes to what kind of support the students need in their career development. I'm going to touch the same issue, but support from the teacher and not the parent. So my name is Holm-Nordhagen, and I am an assistant professor at the University of Southeastern Norway, and I teach and I supervise at our Master in Career Guidance. And I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to present my preliminary result from my own research for you guys. Actually, it's my first time in this kind of context, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I'll do my best, and I'm optimistic. I hope it will go well. I am going to talk about the whole school approach to career guidance. And my practical background in career guidance is from many years at the upper secondary school in Norway as a career counselor, and also actually as a teacher. And through the years, I've become very interested in a collective approach to career guidance in the classroom. And by that, I mean career guidance that is carried out in the classroom with all the students involved. There are many benefits connected to an approach that allows the students to participate and contribute in each other's learning processes. But that's not my main focus today. My intention today is to talk about a study of a collaboration between 2 career counselors and 5 teachers regarding career guidance in the classroom. And this time it is the collaboration between the grown-ups in the classroom, the teachers and the counselors, who will be the center of my attention and not the students, even though it would be interesting to hear from the students as well. But this paper is about the cooperation between the teacher and the career counselor. So what I'm about to present for you is a study of this particular collaboration between teacher and career counselors in upper secondary school in a Norwegian context. An expert committee in career guidance suggested in 2016 in a political inquiry that career guidance should be a whole school responsibility. At the same time, we have an Education Act that says that career guidance shall be a collaboration between different persons and professions in school. And despite this, research shows in Norway that although the field of practice is positive to such an approach, this is more of a parole or vision than an established practice. And a systematic review shows that there is done almost no research in Norway or in the other Nordic countries directly on the whole school approach or the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary cooperation or collaboration in the school when it comes to career guidance. Although many schools in Norway are trying to develop a kind of practice which implement this approach and mindset, we kind of lack the research on it. So I will try. The study I will present is a part of a larger action research project at the same school with a focus on how we can understand this vision of the whole school approach or career guidance as the whole school's responsibility. And then we can, and also what a vision like that may look like when we try it out in the schools. So in a whole school approach, the teacher is a key player and the teachers are in an absolute majority and they are closest to the students in their everyday school life. And in this study, the teacher's role is explored and recognized as a resource when the school's career guidance takes place in the classroom in collaboration between the teacher and the career counselor. So if you want to give me some feedback afterwards, and if there is time, I would like you to just be aware of these questions. Is there any theoretical perspective you could add? Are you familiar with other studies related to these themes? And which of the preliminary findings do you find most interesting, if there is time and if you want to give me some feedback? A starting point, and as a part of the analytical framework, is the assumption that we learn through action and experience. Furthermore, the study rests on a view of learning as something that happens through participation in a context and in interaction with other people. Learning takes place continuously through both random and structured learning experiences, and in this study, it is the structured career learning that is the focus for the collaboration between the teachers and the career counselors. And the aim of their collaboration is to facilitate structured career learning activities together. And career learning is to be considered as a process. And the question here is, how can a collaboration between teachers and career counselors contribute to this process? And how can the teachers' presence and participation in the classroom add something good to this process? So, I will explain this illustration, so don't you worry if you don't understand it immediately. In the school that this study takes place, career guidance in the classroom with the whole class as participants is an established practice. And when the career counselor enters the classroom, the teachers are kind of free to do whatever they want, and they often leave the classroom. Most of them will typically spend the time working with something else, and they will often actually be grateful to have the opportunity to take care of other tasks in a busy workday. So in the action research project at this school, it has been important to us to take small steps towards a whole school approach. And a small step in this context would be to, instead of letting the teacher leave, asking the teacher to stay and invite the teacher to contribute in the structured career learning activities. So that's what we did. 2 career counselors and 5 teachers belonging to 3 classes was brought together to plan, implement and evaluate 3 sessions of structured career learning in 3 classes. 9 sessions of career learning altogether. The overall aim of the sessions was to facilitate a process where the students could explore themselves and their context, their interests and their personal characteristics. All of this to build career competence. This was 16 to 17-year-old students, the first year in upper secondary school. And although the students' learning is the aim of the process, my research focus is not on the students, but on the collaboration, and the teachers and the career counselors' experiences and reflections related to the teachers present and the teachers' participation. The collaboration can be illustrated as I have tried to show in this slide. They started out with a work meeting where they planned the first session in the classroom. And then the session took place. After the session, the teachers and career counselors reflected individually on the collaboration that took place in the session. And then they met in a new work meeting where they shared their reflections, evaluated the session we had finished, and then planned the next. Altogether, there was 4 work meetings, 3 sessions in each class. I participated in all the work meetings. I did a partly participating observation in 3 of the sessions in the classrooms, and I collected individual reflection notes from the teachers and the career counselors. All 4 work meetings was audio taped and transcribed, and I did a thematic analysis of the data using Brown and Clark's 6-step model for analysis. So then we can have a look at the results, the preliminary results. And I wanted to show you 5 themes that was generated from the analysis. It's the teacher as a door opener, the teacher as a didactic sparring partner, the teacher as a role model, and the relations and relevance. So let's start with the teacher as a door opener. The school's timetable is filled up with different subjects, and the teachers have responsibility to teach a given number of hours per year per subject. And in Norway, these hours are strictly counted. And in this situation, the teachers must be strict when they dispose the given hours. The career guidance is not a subject in upper secondary school in Norway, as it is in the middle school. That means that many of the career counselors depend on the teachers to get to spend time with the students, at least if the career counselor wants to have a collective approach and do the career guidance in the classroom with the whole class participating. So the teacher is kind of physically a door opener. He or she will let the career counselor in. And they also function as as door openers in a more abstract way by offering the career counselor important information about the students and the student group, so that the career counselor is able to facilitate career learning processes in the best possible way for that specific group. And that brings me over to the next theme, which is the teacher as a didactic sparring partner. And I think this is actually really important because the teachers are educators. The teachers know pedagogy, they know didactics, and in addition to that, they know the students and the groups that they are in. And in this study, they became important sparring partners to plan the session and also important co-players during the session, because they could help the career counselor to adjust the career guidance till each and every student and for the group as well. So they became important. And then the next theme is the teacher as a role model. And it's kind of like Jenny talked about, this career-related modeling that parents can find themselves in. The teacher can as well. And the teacher as a role model can be identified in 2 ways in this study. First, they functioned as a role model by taking part of the activity in the classroom. Some of the teachers actually choose from the start to be a part of the activities on the same way that the students did, because there wasn't enough time to kind of go into the planning, so that they were not given an active role in leading the sessions. They were just joining with the students because they didn't have the time to plan everything. So the career counselor kind of still had the leading function, and then they just joined as a co-student. And at first I thought, oh, that was not what we intended, but it seemed out it could be an interesting role to have, because, for example, in an exercise that when the career counselor was putting out personal characteristics printed on big sheets on the floor, it could be characteristics like brave or patient, effective, social, and so on. And then the career counselor challenged the students to physically move between the sheets by asking, for example, which of these characteristics best characterize you, and which of these characteristics, it's a really important and difficult word, characteristics, is most useful for you, and or maybe, for example, which of these characteristics do you wish more of, and so on. And the students made choices, they placed themselves onto the sheets, and then the career counselor facilitated plenary reflections around their choices. And in this exercise, as an example, some of the teachers participated in the same way as the students, so they did move as well, and they made choices as well on their own behalf. And in that way, they made the exercise less scary and showed the students how to engage in the activity. So they became a role model in that way. And when the teachers participated in reflections around the future and in reflections around career choices and so on, they also functioned as role models by making career guidance relevant for all, also for the grown-ups. And then we go to the theme relations. I've already pointed out this, but it's an important part of the findings. The teachers know the students. They had a relation to the students that the career counselor didn't have. And the teachers' present and participation in the classroom seemed to comfort the students, making them, especially the most vulnerable of them, feel more safe. And as we all know, I guess feeling safe is an important thing when you're going to a learning process. So the relation had an impact on the participation in the activities, but studying the collaboration also made us aware of the participants' impact on the relation. The teachers said that they got to know their students in new ways, gathering important information about the students' thoughts about the future, their motivation for the other subjects, and so on. So the teachers described that they developed a more holistic understanding of their students and the student's situation and the mindset. And the teacher mentioned this as important knowledge because they could bring that knowledge back to the ordinary subject and in the general follow-up of the students. So it was both the relations that were already there who can kind of contribute in the situation, and the relations was built even stronger by the teachers present. And then the last one, relevance. The finding shows us that the teachers was able to connect the career learning activities to other subjects during the session. And they managed to make the career guidance relevant for the other subjects, and they made the general subjects relevant for the career guidance. So they had a double function there. Okay. So as a kind of underlying theme or a part of a conclusion, or what I could call it, in Norway, we have this expression we use, which is the oil in the engine or the oil in the machine. I don't know if that's is a kind of metaphor that you are all are familiar with. It's in this context and in this collaboration, I would say that the teacher work as an oil or as an element you add to make the process go smoother. And it was not a teacher who got the things moving or going, but the teachers present and participation seemed to oil the process in the classroom. And that's important enough to kind of do the invitation, in my opinion. Yeah. So what is there to discuss? Many of things, of course, but I have just picked out something. These preliminary findings can generate a lot of different discussions, but I would like to focus on the competence and the use of competence and knowledge in inter or multidisciplinary collaboration. And if we assume that we are dealing with competent career counselors, they have the competence needed to be a career counselor. And in Norway, the standards for a competence needed to be a counselor is given in a national framework for career guidance, which is from, it's not old, it's kind of year old. And I would say that, at least in Norway, the most of the other professionals in school don't have the competence needed according to that framework we have. But in Norway, as in many other countries, the focus in career guidance is about to shift from career decision-making to career learning. And this shift demands a shift in competences as well. So in the schools, teachers will be a resource when it comes to facilitate learning processes. And the regular teacher knows about learning. They also know their students, they know, and that knowledge they have is of great value, at least according to these findings. So in a whole school approach to career guidance in a Norwegian context, identifying the different professions, competence, and the competence relevance for career guidance will be a step in the right direction. And we don't need to do the same job, but we have to do the job together from our own professional position or perspective. And maybe the discussion of the whole school approach or the whole school's responsibility, which we say in Norway, shall be about how to collaborate across professions and how to facilitate career learning in a multidisciplinary collaboration about career guidance. So that was actually, the time flies when you talk faster than you did when you tried it. That was actually what I was hoping to say to you. And if there is any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. I can stop the share. There.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, Jenny.
Just very struck with what you said on that final slide about the future success depends on collaboration between professional groups. And I know that you said that you have new standards for career counsellors. And I just wondered, I've been doing some work on professionalism recently, and I just wondered how career practitioners or career counsellors in Norwegian schools are regarded by other teachers. Are they regarded as equal professionals or in some way not? Because that is certainly the case. So, because it seems to me that esteem between different professional groups is going to be fairly critical to the success of this kind of project.
Yeah, it actually is a quite difficult question to answer, because I think it will be local differences in that. But I think, and maybe you can help me out here, Petra, because you know the schools in Norway as well. But I think that they are regarded as equal.
Right.
Yeah, maybe somewhere in the system in the schools that the career counselor is kind of in an organizational way, a little step closer to the leadership of the schools. but they are yeah, I think it will be local differences, but equal is my most correct answer, I think, in general. Yeah. What do you think, Petra? Do you have something to add, maybe?
Let me check this with you, because I think a lot has changed the last 10 years. When previously career counselors were maybe the previously teachers that just got tired of teaching and got the career counseling jobs because they were one-to-one in an office and easier, counted as an easier job.
Yeah.
But a lot of professionalization has happened in Norway, especially with our master programs that we've had the last 5 years. We can see the increase of research and research-based practice, which I think also influences the position that these career counselors have in their schools, and career centers and all the other places that they work. But there's a shift happening in my experience.
Yeah. And actually the career guidance field in a whole is kind of sailing with a tailwind, because we are building this profession now, and the framework is a part of that process. Yeah. And more schools are demands a certain amount of education or competence in career guidance to get that kind of jobs, more than before, like you, Petra, says. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Well, I shall be watching Norway very, very carefully to see what happens.
Yeah. And in this whole school approach thing, which we're trying to figure out what is, it's like, the practice field are interested in that kind of approach, and they are positive to it, and we see all the benefits with an approach like that. But at the same time, we are trying to build our profession as career counselors, and then we kind of, that doesn't fit, because we say you need this competence to do this job, but everyone can do it in the school. So it's kind of, we have to decide, are we professionals which actually can do this job and the other can't, or can we spread our work for everyone in school? So it's a important discussion to have when we have this new framework to work upon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, Sally.
Were the exercises done in the same subject, like maths or English, or were they teachers from different
subjects?
Taught different subjects? Yeah. And do you have any ideas about whether it fits better in certain subjects in the curriculum, or could it be tailored? Say, for example, if it's the sports teacher, then maybe they tailor it more towards careers that are linked to physical activity, or maths to do with. Was there any sort of tailoring, or can you see how it might be tailored to the curriculum subjects?
Yeah, my experience was that the vocational education teachers, which kind of are more focused on that kind of competence building, and they have subjects that is more relevant for the workplaces they are going to participate in. I think they succeeded more to make the career guidance relevant for their own subjects than the teachers in the general subjects like math and Norwegian and English, and so and that kind of is my I think it is like that in general, if I can be general. Because
so might that be something to keep in mind if you want the whole of school approach to work, that you have to figure out where to place which teachers to coordinate or collaborate with?
Yeah, and in that kind of, when you want to collaborate with the teacher, I think now it is it depends on which who is this teacher. Is the teacher engaged, and does the teacher know what career guidance is, and does the teacher himself or herself see the meaning or the relevance with that kind of activities, or is the teacher kind of uninterested? And so it kind of belongs now it is about who it is, not if it is teachers as a group, but which teacher will allow you in, which teacher would be contributing in that kind of collaboration. So it's more on a personal level than a system level. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Sally. Anyone else? And if not, I'm just going to give the word to my dear colleague on the other side of the wall, Petra.
We could write songs about that, on the other side of the wall. And as I mentioned earlier on, the wall is so thin that I can hear the sound echoing through from the other side, as I can imagine Anna can hear me now. But I will thank you, Anna. I think there's I hope for the others listening that they feel that there's a good connection between the three presentations in this session, because where Anne was talking about upper secondary school and an action research program involving teachers and career counselors, I'll be talking about my project in lower secondary school involving teachers and career counselors. And as I mentioned earlier on, particularly the perspective of parents and their role in youngsters' career decisions, Sally Ann and Jenny shed light on, is very interesting for the Norwegian context as well. So let me start by sharing my screen. And let's see. Just give me a minute. All right, can you give me a thumbs up? Does that look good? Oh, fantastic. Okay, then I would like to tell you about my project. My name is Petra Røise. I'm a PhD candidate in career counseling at the University of Southeastern Norway, as is Anna. And my presentation today is a part of my PhD research into curricular dimensions of career education, including practices and discourses in the Norwegian lower secondary school, as mentioned. And today I will share with you my research from the perspective of students on career learning, particularly across contexts in Norway. And this is shedding light on career education as a separate subject. As Anne mentioned, we have this tension in the Norwegian system when we're both looking at career education as a whole school approach, and particularly in lower secondary education, we have a separate subject for career education. So we're trying to do both. We're trying to have it as a separate subject, and we're trying to look into how can we create the whole school approach. And of course, this created tensions in itself. But career education in lower secondary schools in Norway is organized as a mandatory subject, and we call that educational choice, translated. And lower secondary school is for the ages of 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and is mandatory education. The subject was introduced in 2008, and it consists of 110 hours divided over those 3 years. And the core of the subject revolves around students learning how to make sound educational and vocational choices based on their interest and prerequisites, and in addition to acquiring knowledge about opportunities and requirements in the educational system and working life. And this, I think this is familiar for the group here listening to this conference. And in this paper, I will focus on a central part of the curriculum, namely creating a connection between different school contexts and the world of work. And my study contributes to filling the knowledge gap where more research from the perspectives of those receiving career education is required to develop career education. But there have been challenges in implementing the subject in Norwegian lower secondary schools, and I will only name a few. A critical investigation into the subject or the curriculum text revealed an underlying rationale of the individual being responsible for their own education and employability in the near future and throughout their lives. And this modern emphasis on individualization is worrisome in a time where ideas of solidarity are being weakened. And another study found that the subject can have very different designs and content, and many schools describe well-structured and established academic programs. While some see the possibility of modifying the subject to adapt to local challenges, other schools, however, are uncertain about its implementation. And sometimes the time allocated to educational choice is spent on other subjects that teachers value as more important. And quantitative research on students' experience of transitioning from lower to upper secondary school showed that teachers and counselors had little influence on student choice of upper secondary school. But family, friends, salary, and cultural factors such as gender and occupational status, they often overrun the school's role. Furthermore, the career counselors understand the concept of career as a democratic idea, but students interpret it as a project of hierarchical advancement. So in summary, providing career education in lower secondary schools in Norway seems challenging, and it's questionable whether such targeted education achieves the learning outcomes intended for students. And the context of this paper presentation takes departure from a research circle. This is a method in participatory research, where teachers and counselors working in one school in a rural area of Norway, and me as a research circle leader, work together throughout the school year of 2018-2019. And this research circle aimed to develop knowledge on how to understand and strengthen students' career learning between school and working life, with the intent of reducing a narrow focus on career choice and strengthening a widening perspective regarding career. And that's in line with the research of the Danish researcher around this goals. And the work in this research circle focused on an integrated approach to the curriculum of educational choice, as was discussed by Anne, which conditions cooperation within the schools and organization to create knowledge on the students' experience of coherence in career learning across context. And the research circle forms the background for inquiry into students' experience of career learning across context. That was a need we had while working in the research circle together, to go and ask the students how they experience this. And particular attention is given to the emancipatory notion of expanding students' views on education and the world of work. And through the research circle, we cooperated on reflecting and developing two types of placement activities. One, which was work week. This was already an established practice at the school, where students visited a company for a week. And the other activity was work day, and that was a practice we developed in a research circle, where students visit a company just for a day. And the reason for this new activity was to give students access to parts of working life that would not allow them to come for 1 week. And as a part of the established practice at the school, students worked with their CVs and work applications on beforehand. They made presentations for each other after work week. And as a part of our developmental work, and to promote coherence in career learning, the teachers developed a question bank for the students to bring to their work week. And this contained questions related to subject topics and professional conduct. So think about questions as, in what way have you used your language skills during the work week? Does the company advertise for itself? What scheme does the company have for overtime work? Is there a percentage increase? Those kind of questions that the students brought with them to the work week and back again to school. Okay, so let's look into the applied theoretical framework for career learning across context in this project, and that's a bit of a complicated one to explain. But this study builds on descriptions of career learning through a sociological term introduced by Bill Law, familiar by many, namely community interaction. And community interaction theory offers foreground significance to the process of career learning through engagement in and reflection upon encounters between individuals and their community. And through processes of social exchange, community interaction functions as a transmitter for motivation and a modifier for social functioning. An emancipatory notion underpins community interaction theory, in which critical insights can be gained through increased interaction with the community. As Bill Law states, and I quote, "Such thinking sets career development in its immediate community context, emphasizing, for example, the importance of both the entrapping and the liberating effects of learners' role in their own neighborhoods." Unquote. And it suggests that social exchanges support a person's goal for developing new points of view on work, role, and oneself. And according to Law, the more ways a person has for framing what is going on, the more options she has for dealing with it, and that is freedom. And this study also takes on a social cultural perspective on career learning, where a process of mediation through work experience and career education provides students, and I quote Bill Griffiths, with a basis of connecting their context-specific learning with ideas or practices which may have originated outside those contexts. And Bill Law describes this process as follows. In order to achieve transfer of learning, a student must, as first imaginatively, relocate him or herself to somewhere else, doing something else with someone else. And this specification of what comes out of the classroom is what distinguishes outcomes from objectives. An objective is what you can learn, and outcome is how you can use it. However desirable, such transfer is not easily achieved. But without it, it is difficult to imagine what point that will be to career education, says Bill. And according to Ackermann and Bakker, transfer can be associated with one-time and one-sided transitions in which social cultural differences are regarded as problematic. And this study follows the ideas underlying boundary crossing theory in order to reconceptualize transfer in career learning. And Ackermann and Bakker define boundary as it can be seen as a social cultural differences leading to discontinuity in action or interaction. And boundaries simultaneously suggest a sameness and continuity in the sense that within discontinuity, two or more sides are relevant to one another in a particular way. So social cultural differences between school and work life can cause discontinuity because students experience challenges when taking different roles or perspective as they move between different contexts. And at the same time, sameness and discontinuity anticipate that both school and work life are essential sites in which a student's career learning process occurs. And this leads to my research question. So taking departure from community interaction theory, drawing upon boundary crossing, this paper searches to answer the question how students' experience of career learning across context when involved in placement activities. And attention is focused on the student's experience of continuity and discontinuity concerning tensions naturally embedded in career education. So how did we look into this? 4 focus groups of students were carried out to gain insight into the students' experience of career learning through placement activities and related schoolwork. 24 students of 55 in total from the 9th grade, aged 14 to 15 years old, volunteered to participate. And the focus groups lasted around 45 minutes each and were conducted during school hours. And students who did not participate in the focus groups followed regular classes. There was an even gender division between the participating students, and the focus groups were sound recorded and later transcribed. Now let's look at the analysis method, and I will explain this in a bit more detail because here I used 3 phases. First, initially, as a part of the research circle, we used an inductive approach to understand and interpret the data, and it was also part of this collaborative learning process in our research circle. So together we read the transcripts of the focus groups. And after that, I applied a contextual view of learning and analyzed the data using a framework of 4 interrelated components. And building on the analysis strategy by Kinderberg, these components expand research into the meaning of learning about something and learning to become something by looking into what is meaningful, thus contributing to the process of learning from and with one another. And this analysis I adapted for the context of the study, and I will take you quickly through the four causes that I mentioned here. So first, I build my analysis on looking into what experiences, backgrounds, and expectations the students bring into career education. Then I looked into how students' pre-understandings, experience, and intentions are activated. And thirdly, I looked into how the students describe what is going on in career education and what thoughts do they have about this, and what is the source of change. And finally, what meaning does career education have for the students' actual learning? And these 4 components were used to understand the circumstances surrounding the phenomenon of coherence in career learning and to enrich the analysis of students' experiences. So thirdly, I discussed findings and interpretations with the participants in the research circle in order to validate and refine the analysis. And this process led to 3 findings. And the first finding elucidates career education as a space for individual learning trajectories. And the analysis showed students different motives for participating in the placement activities. For example, and then I'll read the quote as mentioned there. Thomas, he spent a work week at a grocery store and he hoped to get a summer job at the store afterwards. And during the focus group, he says, but then, so I was really going to ask about the job. So I chose to work as hard as I could So I was really tired all the time because I worked hard and the new goods came in all the time, but I chose to work hard. And then I kind of lost my motivation because especially at the end, the last day, I saw the boss once. And that was when I first came. And then after that, I did not see the boss. So I could have skipped working and just sit on the toilet and watch YouTube. And here Thomas described what was going on during the placement and his thoughts about this, indicating some sort of source of change. And this frustrating experience taught Thomas what it was like to work there and gave him insight into the culture of this particular workplace. And while students like Thomas had clear motives for applying for particular jobs during the work week, others seemed to have few reflections on their motives. For others, this short work-life experience helped them gather information and figure out what would be the most fun vocation or education to pursue in the future. And the option of applying for a work day revealed other motives. The work day experience gave an ample basis for career learning. For example, Emily, she was a girl in the focus group, and she visited a combined nursing home and medical center. And she was curious and wanted to learn about what it was like working as a doctor. Talking to the doctors confirmed that this was the vocation that she would like to pursue. And Emily gained support for aspirations as she interacted with role models. Through the lens of boundary crossing, this finding shows that career education through placement activities can facilitate meaningfulness through individual learning trajectories. Continuity in career learning can be experienced as a biographical path, connecting learning through various concepts and experience. And I don't think this is such a surprising find. Let's go a bit further to the second finding of the study. The analysis also reveals the students' need for support in preparing, executing, and reflecting on the placement activities meant to help them experience a transfer in their learning processes. So during the execution of the work week, the students were expected to document their experience. They had questions from the question bank to which they should seek answers. They were encouraged to document their work by taking photos and writing down notes. And they expressed the need for support in conducting school tasks while spending time at the workplace. And students' discussions in the focus groups also showed a potential for collective reflection. So sharing their experiences added to their repertoire of information and contributed to further reflections on alternative perspectives. And these reflections during focus groups illustrate rich grounds for collective processes in the classroom through the influence of community interaction. Sharing experience in the focus group also revealed a need for support after the placement activity. The focus group dialogue allowed Emily, and she's mentioned here on the slide, to reflect on the connection between school and work and what she had learned during the workday. And she pointed to the need to talk to someone after workday about what they had done and what they had learned from the experience. And I'll read out loud. Yes, it's easier when someone asks direct questions. When you talk about it with your parents, it's a bit like, I did this and I did this. While now you ask me more like, what did you learn actually? And these findings confirm the importance of students' preparation before placement activities, and they highlight the potential for individual and collective learning through reflections conducted after the placement activities. However, the amount of time spent on the class presentation and the assessments connected to the placement activities seem to limit the time left for collective reflection in the classroom. In addition, more negatively loaded placement experiences seem to provide fertile grounds for further reflection. Hence, not addressing reflections together after presentation can seem like a missed opportunity for collective career learning. And the third findings from the study elucidate how the placement activity gave insight into societal expectations that students as individuals have to meet after completing their education. And I think this was one of the findings that surprised me the most, because first of all, students described their experience during work week and work day as mostly different from school and as a positive thing. So Simon here, which I quote here on the right side, yes, many people whine about how at school you only learn math and such and not what you have to do later in life, while here you can actually get to learn what to do afterwards and how it is. This quote describes the student's experienced relevance of placement activities. And furthermore, for many students, a connection between school and work life seemed to be a difficult concept to grasp or even absent. So for many students, regarded Many students regarded the placement activities as standalone activities. And it was particularly interesting to note that these students, teachers, they had made efforts to facilitate a reflection process on how school subjects were applied in work life. And in the focus groups, students looked for signs of connection through the lens of school subjects such as Norwegian, English, or mathematics. And though they identified elements of the school subjects within the context of work, it did not seem easy to connect learning at school with the tasks performed in work life. And another interesting find across the focus groups was that students' desire to experience more placement activities and see more of the world of work. So they expressed hope that they could eventually discover something about the world of work that was previously unknown to them and wished to gain more self-knowledge through different interactions. And together, these points elaborate on the possible influences of community interaction on personal motivation and educational relevance. And in addition, the stories from the students illustrate criticism of a subject-specific school culture, wherein students cannot grasp the connection between learning at school and actual learning tasks in work life, actual tasks in working life. And this points back to the aim of work experience activities in lower secondary school. Career education across contexts does not aim for sameness, but attempts to explore the learning potential of discontinuity. New perspectives on coherence in career learning and challenges in utilizing emancipatory potential have been identified. And I will discuss 2 points here and start with the pitfall of educationalizing, as I call it. Because by bringing schoolwork into the student's work experience, these tasks can be identified as mediating artifacts, coordinating for effortless movement of information and how school subjects were interwoven with the world of work. And the aim was to increase students' exploration of reflective connections and strengthen their motivation for schooling when they returned to school. This aim, however, was not directly achieved. First, through the voices of the students, it became visible how using the question bank created new challenges. Second, it made some students more aware of the presence of school subjects within the world of work to some degree. However, some struggled to see the relevance of schooling upon returning from the placement activity. Thirdly, students also voiced discontinuity in the school task related to the placement activity, which was unintentional and not apparent to their teachers. So creating school tasks based on the subject-specific organization of the school seemed to have hindered the coherence between the world of work and school. And from a critical perspective, it may seem that intentions with the school task were to overcome the difference between school and the world of work, rather than overcoming the discontinuities. And I think this is a very important point here. And second discussion I would like to put forward after this finding is that the study elucidates on the value of dialogue in focus groups, where a general exchange of experiences and learning outcomes occurred. And this can be seen in contrast to the class presentations after the work week, where there was little time for dialogue or reflection. And the students' dialogues reveal an unexploited potential in maximizing complexity of experiences represented in a classroom, school, or community to create dialogues that can expand students' points of view and awareness of possible futures. Therefore, to help students experience emancipation, the complexity of their positions and motives can be seen as a repertoire for career learning, because it is complexity which offers options, identifies causes and effects, and enables autonomy according to Buddha. Furthermore, the voices of the students illustrate the potential of collective reflection for placement activities to be considered meaningful, not just one's individual's choice, but about career learning as a collective endeavor into a world of work. So conclusively, I think that these findings elaborate on the complicated challenges that educational institutions face as they attempt to connect schools to out-of-school context. This entails meeting curriculum standards and discussing when and where an educational structure, and at the same time overlooking the specific properties of the world of work, can be more constructive. So placement activities are administered not because of the sameness between the world of work and school, but because of the differences between these contexts. And the goal of career education across contexts is not to create seamless connections, but to create a space for reflecting on tensions and contradictions in learning across these contexts. And in concluding, this study and previous research show that systematic preparation for and reflection on career learning activities is much needed. Following boundary crossing theory, career education can function as a transformed space for critical reflection and connection while maintaining the integrity of school and world of work as different contexts for career learning. To achieve such a transformation, a clear didactic approach seems needed to protect the uniqueness of the curriculum in educational choice in a region lower secondary school and its potential to address misperceptions regarding the world of work, class and gender issues. The discontinuity prescribed by students in this study, it can and it should be at the core of career education. Otherwise, the main goal of career education would not be met. Here I will finish my presentation by showing you references in very small lettering and some contact information. And I really hope that you have some questions or remarks, anything else that is relevant that you associate with what I've been presenting here. We have a few more minutes. And otherwise, please let me hear, send me an email if you have anything you want to know afterwards. And I will stop sharing this slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, hi, Simon.
Hi. I was just interested in whether students reflecting on their career learning in the focus group actually encouraged others in the group to reflect on it, and whether there was this kind of mutual learning through each other.
Yeah, and that was why it was highlighted as one of the findings, because that was such an interesting process during the focus groups where they discovered things about each other that they hadn't discussed. So there was one that had the quote I used from Thomas that had worked in the grocery store. There was another boy, he had also considered applying at this grocery store for work week because he thought that would be fun to be there for a week. But then he heard Thomas's presentation, and in the focus group he discusses, oh, when I heard your presentation, I discovered it wasn't fun at all. And then suddenly the conversation goes on about, oh, when I heard your presentation about how you worked at the municipality office, I thought that was really interesting because I didn't know anything about it. And then somebody says, oh, but then you worked at a place where you only she worked, a girl that worked in the kitchen and she only cut vegetables all week. And the others were thinking, oh, and I thought that I had a much better placement because I got to do a lot of tasks during work week, but you got to do one thing and that was cut vegetables. So there was this dialogue going on about things that they didn't have time in the classroom to discuss this together. There was only time to make a presentation and serve it, listen to the presentation. And they had to move quickly to next presentation. So they see this room for reflection was closed down. There was no time. But in the focus group, there was time.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
Is that something that you recognize?
No, I just wondered when you were talking through and I heard you talking about Thomas's story, I thought that must have got conversation going. They must have got that from each other. I think it was just because I think it was just because with our research, the career conversations were so important. I just wondered actually whether there was space, and the career conversations obviously happening between young people is just as valuable.
Yeah. Well, there was this tension, this was the teachers were very occupied with giving the students assignments that would be graded, because they said if we don't grade assignments for this subject, then they will not make efforts. But I didn't get that sense. I thought when I was at the school and got to know these students, they seemed very into the subject, and they seemed it was very relevant. But the teacher said if you don't give them a graded assignment, they will not work. And I think I would like to challenge that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was very useful to hear about the parents and carers, then about the counsellors and the teachers, and now about the students' experiences. So in this session, we've had a really good combination and it all fits into whether or not there's a whole of school approach.
Yeah. And how many actors are involved with all the different positions. What's your background, Sally?
Industrial relations.
Industrial relations.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, then I think we'll finish here.
And we'll go to the energetic musical performance.
Yep.
Thanks for now.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. That was a really good session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.